The dust has long settled on Babylon. Millennia of wind and sun have ground its towering ziggurats and magnificent palaces back into the earth from which they came. All that's left are broken bricks, scattered across the arid plains of modern-day Iraq, and the ghost of a legend so potent it still echoes in our modern world. Babylon, the name itself conjures images of opulence, of power, of an empire that seemed eternal. Its fall is a story that reminds us of a universal truth. All great things, no matter how mighty, eventually come to an end. It is a cautionary tale, a historical footnote we study with detached curiosity. We tend to look at its fall from a safe distance, a collection of archaeological data, historical facts, figures, and dates that we can neatly categorize and file away. We read the grand narratives of kings and their strategies, of clashing armies and shifting borders, but we rarely, if ever, ask what it truly felt like to be there. What was it like to be an ordinary person, a face in the crowd, living and breathing in the world's most magnificent city, just as the very foundations of your reality began to crack and splinter? What did it feel like to watch, day by agonizing day, as the warning signs appeared, one by one, like insidious omens of a coming flood? A flood that would sweep away not just your city, but your entire world. You're not a king, resplendent in gold and wielding absolute power. You're not a general, your mind a map of battlefields and troop movements. You're a scribe's apprentice, a young man of no particular importance, living and working in the colossal shadow of the great ziggurat, Etemenanki, the sacred tower said to kiss the heavens. Let's call you Elena. For every moment of your 17 years, Babylon has been more than a city. It has been the unshakable center of the known world, a metropolis blessed by the gods, protected by walls so vast and imposing they were a wonder in their own right. The harvests from the Fertile Crescent have always been plentiful. The temples gleam with gold offered in gratitude, and the Euphrates River, the city's lifeblood, has always flowed strong and steady, a divine promise of unending prosperity. But lately, something's wrong. A quiet, pervasive uneasiness has settled over the city, as subtle and chilling as the change in the wind before a sandstorm. It's a feeling that has no name, a tension that hums just beneath the surface of daily life. You hear it in the hushed, urgent conversations in the marketplace that fall silent when a guard walks past. You see it in the worried, sidelong glances exchanged between priests in the temple courtyards. You feel it in the tightening grip of your master's hand as he reviews the royal ledgers, his knuckles white, his lips a thin, grim line. You try to dismiss it. You tell yourself it's nothing. Cities have moods, seasons of doubt and anxiety that come and go like the phases of the moon. But then you see the first real sign, a tangible tremor in the unshakable certainty of your world, and for the very first time in your life, you feel a dread so deep and primal, it chills you to the bone. You are about to witness the end of an age, not from the pages of a history book, but from the heart of the storm itself. To truly understand the depth of that dread, you must first understand the towering height of the pride it toppled. To be Babylonian was not just a nationality, it was an identity of supremacy. It was to be at the very heart of everything that mattered, the pinnacle of civilization, culture, and power. Your world is one of baked brick and brilliant, almost impossibly vibrant color. Every morning, as the first light of dawn spills over the eastern plains, you walk from your modest dwelling to your master's workshop. The journey takes you through streets that are not merely busy, but are a living, breathing testament to the empire's reach. They teem with a chaotic, intoxicating energy. Merchants from the ancient city of Ur, their faces weathered by the southern sun, and traders from the far-off land of Egypt, their garments exotic and strange, hawk their wares in a cacophony of commerce. Their voices, a chaotic but harmonious mix of a dozen languages, rise and fall as they barter over pottery, textiles, spices, and metals. You see stern-faced priests in their immaculate white linen robes, their presence a constant reminder of the gods who watch over the city. You see soldiers in their polished bronze helmets and leather cuirasses, their confident swagger a reflection of the empire's military might. And you see farmers, their skin baked brown by the sun, driving carts groaning under the weight of barley, dates, and melons, the bounty of the fertile earth. Above this vibrant chaos, the city itself screams its own glory. You must crane your neck, shielding your eyes from the sun, to see the top of the Atamanyanki ziggurat, a man-made mountain of faith, a colossal stairway of glazed brick dedicated to the city's patron god, the mighty Marduk. Its 7 tiers, each painted a different color, rise in succession towards the heavens. You've been told since you were a child that its steps are a stairway to heaven itself, the meeting point between the mortal and the divine. You walk past the royal palace, a sprawling labyrinthine complex of courtyards, audience halls, and private chambers where the fate of the empire is decided by men you will never see. But the true jewel of Babylon, the sight that makes every visitor and even you who sees it every day gasp in awe, is the Ishtar Gate. Built by the legendary king Nebuchadnezzar II during the city's golden age, its walls are a sea of brilliant, lapis lazuli blue, glazed bricks that shimmer under the Mesopotamian sun. Marching in majestic procession across these walls are perfect rows of bulls, symbols of the storm god Adad, and Surush, lit, scaly dragons, the sacred animal of the god Marduk. They are rendered in such exquisite detail, with such vibrant yellows and browns against the deep blue, that they seem to ripple with a latent divine energy. To pass through this gate is to be enveloped by a profound statement of power and piety. It is a daily reminder that you are protected, that you live in a city favored and fortified by the gods, a fortress of civilization standing defiant in a chaotic world. Your master, an old and learned scribe named Zabnu, his face a creased map of long years spent hunched over clay tablets, loves to tell you stories of Nebuchadnezzar's golden age. He speaks of it as a time when the gods walked hand in hand with men. He talks about the Hanging Gardens, a wonder of engineering and botany, supposedly built for a homesick queen. Describes a lush green mountain of terraces and waterfalls, rising impossibly out of the arid plains, a testament to a king's love, and a symbol of power so immense it could bend nature itself to its will. You've never seen these gardens up close. They are hidden within the palace walls, a privilege for royals in their court. But the legend is woven into the fabric of your identity. It is a story of a power that can create paradise on earth. And then there are the walls. The walls of Babylon are the stuff of legend, whispered about in taverns from Lydia to the borders of India. Not one wall, but 2 massive, parallel fortifications, punctuated by hundreds of towers. They are so thick, Zabnu claims, that a 4-horse chariot could be turned around on top without its wheels slipping over the edge. A deep, wide moat, fed by the ever-present Euphrates, circles the outer wall, its waters forming an almost impassable barrier. For generations, these defenses have been the ultimate promise of safety, the physical manifestation of the word impregnable. No army has ever breached them. No enemy has ever come close. The idea of Babylon falling isn't just improbable, it's unthinkable, a profane violation of the natural and divine order. This profound sense of security is the bedrock of your life. It's in the taste of the barley bread you eat, in the cool water you drink, and in the familiar cadences of the prayers you offer to Marduk for the city's continued glory. You're a small, insignificant part of a glorious, eternal empire. A single thread in a vast tapestry woven by gods and kings. Your future, like the city's, feels guaranteed, stretching out in an unbroken line of prosperity. But this feeling, this deep and comforting certainty is the first thing that will begin to rot from within. You just don't know it yet. The pride of Babylon is a gilded cage, beautiful and strong, adorned with jewels and blessed by the gods, but it is a cage nonetheless, and its splendor has deafened you and your people to the faint, metallic sound of the key, held by an unseen hand, beginning to turn in the lock. The first warning isn't a clap of thunder from the heavens or a terrifying prophecy from a mad seer. It is something far more mundane, yet far more intimate, the changing weight of a loaf of bread in your hand. One morning, as you navigate the familiar chaos of the market, you notice the price of barley has gone up again. The merchant scoops the grain into the scales, and the amount of shekels you must place on the other side is noticeably more than last week. It's not a huge jump, just a few pieces of silver more, but it's the third time this has happened in as many months. The baker, a woman whose face has become a roadmap of worry lines, just shrugs her heavy shoulders when you ask. She gestures with a flour-dusted hand towards the docks. The grain barges from the northern farmlands aren't coming as often, she mutters, her voice low and laced with resignation. The harvests, they say, just aren't what they used to be. The land is tired. Later that day, your own work confirms the baker's fears on a much grander scale. Your master Zebnu has you copying trade ledgers, a tedious but important task, as your reed stylus moves across the damp clay tablet, pressing the cuneiform wedges that represent the lifeblood of the empire. You see the numbers for yourself. They tell a story of slow, creeping decay. Imports of fine timber from the mountains of Lebanon, essential for construction and shipbuilding, have dwindled. Shipments of copper from the mines in the eastern mountains, needed for tools and weapons, are less frequent. The caravans that bring precious stones and exotic goods from the distant east arrive with fewer laden beasts. The columns on the ledger show a slow, steady, undeniable decline. Zabnu, seeing the furrowed brow of your concentration, leans over your shoulder. His breath smells of date wine and a sour anxiety you are beginning to recognize. "The king is in Tamar," he whispers, his voice barely audible, as if the very walls of his workshop are listening. He says he spends the empire's wealth building a new home for his moon god, while the house of Marduk here is neglected. The trade routes are not as secure. The governors in the provinces grow fat, while the heart of the empire weakens. It's a dangerous thing to say aloud, a criticism of the king that borders on treason, but you've been hearing similar whispers all over the city. The king, Nabonidus, is a strange and distant figure. He has been gone for years, living in a self-imposed exile in the Arabian oasis of Taimah, hundreds of miles away, absorbed in his religious devotions. He left his son, the regent Belshazzar, to rule in his stead, but the king's absence feels like a hollow space at the center of the empire, a vacuum into which uncertainty rushes. Power, you're beginning to learn, isn't just about armies and edicts. It's about presence, about the visible embodiment of authority. And in the vacuum left by Nabonidus, fear and doubt are starting to creep in like desert weeds. The economic strain is becoming harder and harder to ignore. It is no longer just a matter of numbers on a clay tablet. You see it in the threadbare cloaks of the dock workers, their shoulders slumped with fatigue and idleness. You see it in the smaller portions of dried fish sold at the stalls along the river. You see the grand building projects that once employed thousands of laborers, projects that reshaped the city's skyline, have slowed to a crawl. Scaffolding stands abandoned on half-finished temples. The only construction that seems to continue with any urgency is the constant reinforcement of the city's outer walls, a monumental task that consumes vast resources of manpower and materials, as if the city is turning inward, trying to insulate itself from its own decay. One hot afternoon, seeking a breath of air, you walk down to the riverbank. You stand and watch the water, and you notice the level of the mighty Euphrates, the great artery of your civilization, is lower than you have ever seen it. Wide mudflats, cracked and dry under the sun, are exposed where deep water once flowed. The river looks sluggish, tired, and sickly. An old fisherman mending his nets nearby sees you stare. He doesn't look up from his work, his gnarled fingers expertly weaving the twine. The river is angry, he grunts, his voice raspy. Or maybe it is sad. When a father abandons his house, the well springs dry up. The gods are thirsty. His words are probably just a simple man's superstitious explanation for a long dry spell, but they stick with you, lodging in your mind like a burr. The king is away, the economy is failing, the great public works have ceased, and now even the river itself seems to be shrinking away. These aren't isolated problems, they are threads, and you are starting to see the grim pattern they are weaving together. For the very first time in your life, you look up at the colossal sun-baked walls of your city at their proud and unyielding strength, and a sliver of terrifying doubt enters your heart. Can walls really protect a city from itself? Can they hold back an enemy as insidious as hunger, as pervasive as doubt, as corrosive as decay? The ground beneath your feet, once as solid and dependable as the empire itself, no longer feels so firm. It feels like shifting sand. The economic tremors are unsettling, a constant, grinding worry that gnaws at the edges of life. But the second warning strikes at something far deeper, something more fundamental, your soul. Babylon is a city of gods. Their temples are its bones, their intricate rituals its very breath. Every aspect of life, from the planting of crops to the crowning of a king, is governed by the divine will. At the absolute center of this celestial pantheon stands Marduk, the dragon slayer, the bringer of order, the king of the gods. He isn't just a god, he is your god, the divine patron of Babylon. The city's power, its wealth, its very existence are seen as a direct reflection of his favor. But your king, Nabonidus, doesn't see it that way. From his remote desert sanctuary in Taimah, he has issued a series of decrees that have shaken the empire's religious foundations to their core. He has declared that the supreme god, the one most worthy of worship, isn't Marduk at all, but Sin, the god of the moon. At first, this was a theological debate for the high priests, a confusing and abstract argument conducted in the cloistered halls of the temple. Now, the consequences of this royal heresy are spilling into the streets, poisoning the very air you breathe. You see it most clearly at the Esagila, the great temple complex of Marduk. The once lavish daily offerings are smaller, the flow of royal funds and precious metals redirected to the construction of new temples for Sin, far away in the Arabian desert. The priests of Marduk, men who once walked through the city with an aura of absolute authority, their pronouncements treated as law, now wear masks of grim, simmering resentment. You see them gathered in the temple courtyards, their conversations low and furious. They feel betrayed, their ancient power and prestige eroded by an absent king's strange new faith. The breaking point, the moment of public crisis, comes with the Akitu festival. The New Year celebration is the most important and sacred event on the Babylonian calendar, a meticulously orchestrated 12-day ritual of cosmic renewal. It is a time when the entire city participates in a grand drama that reaffirms the triumph of order over chaos. The climax of the festival is when the king clasps the hand of the golden statue of Marduk, a symbolic act that legitimizes his right to rule and, crucially, secures the god's divine blessing for the coming year. It is a spectacle of immense power and communal catharsis, a citywide confirmation that all is right with the world. But this year, the festival is a hollow, tragic shell of its former self. Nabonidus isn't here to perform the essential rites. His son Belshazzar, as regent, cannot take his place. The ritual is ancient and specific, demanding the presence of the true anointed king. The central act of the festival, the very gesture that ensures the city's stability and prosperity, is left undone. The great processions through the city streets feel subdued and half-hearted. The crowds that line the processional way are smaller, their ritual cheers lacking conviction. An almost unbearable anxiety hangs in the air, thick and suffocating. How can the new year truly begin without Marduk's blessing? Have the gods been abandoned by the king, and will they now abandon the city in turn? Your master Zebnu grows more withdrawn and morose. He is a deeply devout man, and to him this is not a political misstep but a catastrophic blasphemy, an act of cosmic arrogance. "We have angered our father," he says one evening, his voice trembling as he stares into the flickering flame of an oil lamp. "We have turned our backs on the God who raised this city from the mud and made it great. We have insulted him in his own house. Why should he protect us now?" The question hangs in the small dark room, unanswered and terrifying. You start to notice subtle but profound changes in your neighbors and in the city around you. The small household shrines to Marduk present in nearly every home seem to have more frequent and more desperate offerings. A little pile of grain, a piece of fruit, as if ordinary people are trying to personally make up for the king's official heresy. But you also see others, nervously hedging their bets. Small, discreet symbols of the lunar crescent, Sin's emblem, begin to appear on doorposts or carved into amulets worn around the neck. It is a quiet, fearful nod to the new power, an attempt to appease a distant king and his favored god. The spiritual and religious unity of Babylon, once its greatest strength, is visibly fracturing. The city feels spiritually adrift, its moral compass spinning wildly. The gods themselves seem to be at war, and the city is their battlefield. This is a far more dangerous crack than the one in the economy. A city can survive hunger. Its people can tighten their belts and endure. But can it survive a loss of faith? Can it stand when its people no longer believe in the divine contract that has protected them for centuries? You look up at the moon, the one your king so reveres, shining brightly in the clear night sky. It no longer looks like a gentle, guiding light. It looks like a cold, vast, indifferent eye, watching a city that has lost its way, a city stumbling in the dark. The third warning does not appear in the ledgers or the temples. It arrives on the tongues of weary travelers and frightened merchants. It starts as a rumor, a name carried on the hot desert winds: Cyrus. A Persian king from the mountainous land to the east, a brilliant, ambitious conqueror who first swallowed the powerful kingdom of the Medes, and then, to the shock and disbelief of the entire world, defeated and captured Cyrus, the king of Lydia. A man whose name was synonymous with fabulous, unimaginable wealth. At first, these are just distant stories, tales from faraway lands to be discussed over wine in the city's taverns. Persia is far away, its king no immediate concern of Babylon, the eternal city secure behind its legendary walls. But the stories grow more frequent, more urgent. The dispatches that arrive for the regent Belshazzar become more alarming. The shadow of Cyrus is stretching relentlessly westward, across the plains of Mesopotamia toward you. Then, the abstract threat becomes a tangible reality. The refugees begin to arrive. It starts as a trickle, a single family with a donkey, their possessions bundled in coarse cloth. Soon it becomes a steady, desperate stream. Families from towns and villages along the Tigris River, their faces etched with the dust of the road and the deep lines of fear, pour into the city seeking safety. They talk about the Persian army, a force of unimaginable size, a disciplined and relentless war machine. But they also say something strange. Something that plants a seed of confusion in the city's collective mind. They say that Cyrus is merciful to those who surrender. They whisper that he does not sack cities that open their gates, that he respects the local gods and customs of the people he conquers. This news, this rumor of a merciful conqueror, splits the city. It acts like a solvent on the cracking unity of Babylon. For many, like your master Zabnu, The Persians are just the next in a long line of barbarian hordes to be inevitably crushed against the city's mighty walls. They place their unshakable faith in Babylon's defenses and in the strength of its army. They see any talk of Cyrus's mercy as a clever trick, a form of psychological warfare, propaganda designed to weaken their resolve before the inevitable assault. A conqueror is a conqueror, Zabnu scoffs. He will enslave our sons and despoil our temples like all the others. But for others, the whispers are not a trick, but a seed of dangerous hope. The alienated priests of Marduk, still seething from the king's apostasy, wonder aloud if this Cyrus, this foreigner, could be a liberator sent by Marduk himself to punish Nabonidus and restore the proper order. The merchants, whose trade has been crippled by the king's neglect and the insecurity of the roads, wonder if a new, strong ruler could bring back stability and prosperity. The common people, struggling with high prices and a sense of abandonment, begin to wonder if a change of master might not be for the worse. This divided loyalty is a subtle poison spreading through the city's veins. It means that when the enemy finally arrives at the gates, not everyone inside the walls will see them as the enemy. War preparations, once a distant concept, become an inescapable part of daily life. The sounds of the city change. The usual din of the marketplace is now punctuated by the rhythmic clang of hammers on stone as work gangs strengthen the fortifications day and night. The moats are dredged deeper, the stinking mud piled high on the banks. Young men are conscripted into the army, plucked from their workshops and fields. You watch tearful families seeing them off, mothers and wives clutching at them as they are marched away to the barracks. For many Babylonians, all this frantic activity is a comfort, a visible, tangible sign that Babylon is ready, that it is rising to meet the challenge. It creates a false, brittle sense of security, a defiant pride that papers over the deep, festering cracks in the city's unity. One evening, you climb to the flat roof of your master's house and look out over the sprawling, darkening city. The sheer scale of it is still breathtaking. In the distance, you can see the bonfires of the work crews on the northern wall, tiny sparks of human defiance against the encroaching darkness. The air, usually thick with the smells of cooking fires and fragrant oils, now carries a different scent, a mix of bravado and fear. The city is like a cornered animal, a great lion puffing out its chest to look as dangerous as possible, even as it trembles inside. You're no longer just worried about the price of bread or the anger of a neglected god. You're now facing a real, mortal threat, an army with a name and a fearsome reputation. The shadow in the east now has a face, it has an army, and it is coming. And as you stare out into the night, you have to wonder, when it finally arrives, which way will the people of Babylon be facing? Toward the enemy outside the walls, or toward the enemies they've made within? The end doesn't come with the thunder of a great siege. There are no battering rams against the gates, no thunder of catapults hurling stones against the walls, no final bloody battle on the ramparts. It comes during a party. Even with the formidable Persian army camped somewhere out there in the darkness beyond the walls, the regent Belshazzar declares a massive citywide festival. The official reason, proclaimed by heralds in every square, is to boost morale, to show the enemy that Babylon is unafraid, confident, and joyous behind its impenetrable defenses. The real reason, you and many others suspect, is to distract a city that is on the verge of outright panic. And so the city plunges into a forced, frantic, almost hysterical celebration. Wine requisitioned from the royal cellars flows freely in the public squares. Loud, insistent music echoes from the rooftops. There's a wild, manic energy in the air. It's the gaiety of the condemned, the desperate revelry of a city dancing on its own grave. You walk through the streets, and it all feels thin, brittle, and wrong. The laughter is too loud, the dancing too frenzied. It's a performance of confidence, not the real thing. You hear lurid tales spreading through the crowd of Belshazzar's own feast in the palace, a spectacle of supreme decadence. The stories claim that in a fit of drunken arrogance, he called for the sacred gold and silver vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar decades ago, and used them to toast his own glory and the might of Babylon, an act of sacrilegious hubris, just begging for swift and terrible divine retribution. You don't join in the festivities. That cold, hard knot of dread that first formed months ago is settled permanently in your stomach. You retreat to the quiet of your small room, trying to find solace in the familiar shapes of the cuneiform characters on a tablet, but your mind keeps wandering. You think of the disturbingly low water in the Euphrates. You think of the absent king in his desert oasis, praying to his cold moon god while his city faced its greatest crisis. You think of the divided city, where some citizens were secretly praying for deliverance from the Persian army, while others were quietly praying for deliverance by them. Sleep doesn't come. You lie on your mat, listening to the muffled sounds of the celebrations slowly die down. In the deepest hours of the night, the festival's chaotic symphony finally fades away into an unnerving, profound silence. A city of nearly 1 million people should never be this quiet. The silence itself is more frightening than the noise that preceded it. Unable to rest, you climb to the roof again and look out over the sleeping metropolis. The moon, Nabonidus' god, is high and bright, bathing the city in a pale, ghostly light. Everything seems to be holding its breath. You look towards the dark ribbon of the river. It's dark and still. Too still. Then you hear it, not the roar of an attacking army or the clash of swords, just a single, confused shout from the direction of the river gate. Then another. Then a woman's scream, sharp and terrified, cutting through the silence. The sounds are of confusion and surprise, not of battle. Lights begin to appear in windows. Doors are unbarred. People emerge from their homes, their faces pale and bewildered in the moonlight. The rumors spread like fire through dry reeds, passed in panicked whispers from rooftop to rooftop, from street to street. The Persians. They're inside. They are inside the walls. The statement seems impossible, a collective madness. The gates were sealed, the walls were manned. But the incredible story that emerges is one of audacious, silent genius, the Persian army. Its movements hidden by the darkness of night and the city's drunken, self-imposed distraction had undertaken a massive engineering feat. Upriver, they had dug channels to divert the flow of the mighty Euphrates River into a nearby basin. The water level dropped. They had simply marched in silence through the muddy riverbed, under the massive fortified arches of the walls where the water was now only knee-deep. They entered the city not through a breach in its impenetrable defenses, but through the very artery that was meant to give it life. Panic finally erupts, but it's scattered, leaderless, and futile. There's no organized resistance. The Babylonian army, its commanders and officers likely drunk at Belshazzar's feast, is caught completely and utterly by surprise. The conquest is a swift, surgical, almost silent operation. The great, invincible city of Babylon didn't fall to a siege. It was simply opened up and hollowed out while it was partied. All the warning signs, the failing economy, the deep religious schism, the divided loyalties, the arrogant leadership had led to this single, anticlimactic night. They weren't omens of a great battle to come. They were the symptoms of a sickness that had already rotted the city from the inside out, leaving just a hollow, beautiful shell. The dread you felt for months finally coalesces into a devastating certainty. Your home hasn't been conquered in a blaze of glory. It has been given away. The story of Babylon's fall is a powerful and sobering reminder of how even the greatest and most seemingly eternal civilizations can crumble from within. It's a testament to how decay begins when leaders lose touch with their people, when internal divisions are allowed to fester, and when a society becomes blinded by its own myth of invincibility. These patterns are not just ancient history. They are deeply human, and they repeat themselves over and over again. If you find these deep dives into the human side of history compelling, if you want to understand the feeling behind the facts, think about subscribing and hitting that notification bell. It really helps us continue to explore these pivotal moments when the world changes forever. In the gray light of the dawn that followed, a new flag, a foreign standard, flew over the Astarte Gate. Cyrus the Great, the Persian conqueror, entered the city he had taken without a fight. He came not as a destroyer, but as a self-proclaimed liberator. He made public proclamations guaranteeing the peace and security of the city, promising to respect the property and, most importantly, the religion of the Babylonians. In a masterful political move that secured his new throne, he went to the Esagila temple and paid homage to Marduk, instantly winning him the fervent support of the alienated priests and much of the relieved population. For you, Elani, life goes on, but in a world that has been irrevocably altered. The city isn't a smoking ruin as you had always feared a conquered city would be. The markets reopen within days, people go back to their work, their faces a mixture of relief, confusion, and shame. But the air of effortless superiority, the innate pride of being a Babylonian, is gone forever. It has been replaced by a quiet, collective humiliation. You are no longer a citizen of the world's greatest empire. You are a subject of a new one. Babylon will remain a great and important city for a time, a jewel in the Persian crown, but its independence, its unique soul, was lost in the silence of that night. The fall of Babylon wasn't a single event. It was the quiet culmination of 1,000 small corrosions, a death by 1,000 cuts. It was a king who valued his personal faith over the spiritual unity of his people. It was an economy strained to the breaking point by neglect and distant priorities. It was a populace so divided and demoralized that many saw the enemy as a better alternative to their own leadership. That division and ultimately, it was a belief in their own invincibility so absolute that they threw a party while their doom crept in silently through the back door. The warning signs were all there. They were in the rising price of bread, in the abandoned rituals at the heart of their faith, in the frightened faces of refugees streaming into the city. The people of Babylon saw them, felt them, and whispered about them in the marketplace and on the rooftops. But they failed to connect the dots, failed to understand what these signs meant when taken together, until it was far, far too late. It leaves us, even now, with a timeless and deeply unsettling question. What warning signs are we, in our own time, choosing to ignore?